I'm Jules Strawberry, and I'd like to answer the question, how do we test the spacesuit? Well, first, I'd like to say that we test small parts of the spacesuit before we put it all together and put a human in the suit. We want the suit to be as safe as possible before a person gets into it. But there are several different ways. One of the fun ways is in a large swimming pool, the world's largest of its kind, called the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, the NBL. The NBL is here in Houston, Texas, near the Houston Spaceport, where I work. And the NBL has a submerged mock-up of the International Space Station. Now, the pool isn't as long as the International Space Station, so they actually break it up into sections and put it in the corners. And then the astronauts can float in the pool as though they were in microgravity.
So you can see what we do to offset the weight in the water. You see a lot of parts of that are plastic. In some cases you actually have to use foam in order to be able to get it neutrally buoyant or to float inside the water so it doesn't hang. You'll see when they pull the spacesuits out, the spacesuits will have a variety of pockets. So you may see some of them filled with foam, some of them will be filled with weights, and it's what the scuba divers use to keep the suits neutrally buoyant. Red on the suit means that's an EV1, so he's basically in charge of the spacewalk. You can't see it on the other suit, which is a white stripe, and that would be EV2. See them now starting to pull all the tools off of the front of the suit. Everything is kind of hanging down. All the support tools that they use.
Yeah, you were in. You were in. David.
Those are the weight packs that they're taking off. Weights and floats. Those are where they put the pockets that you use to do the adjustments when they're underwater.
There's foam blocks that are placed on the person on the astronaut suit to increase buoyancy, to make them float a little bit more. They also can put the blocks on equipment to make it float, or the divers can put their hands under some of the equipment so that the astronaut feels less mass from those objects. The NBL is awesome, and it is always a privilege to visit, and especially to see astronauts coming out of the water. The astronauts are actually connected to a stand, and that stand is pulled out of the water by a crane because the suit is so heavy, especially when it gets wet. Another way that we can test the suit is in an airplane. We take the airplane and it flies in parabolas, in curves, and when it's at the top of the curve, there is a period of weightlessness, and then we can perform tests. And this airplane flies over and over and over again. Now, different planes have been used over the years. My understanding is that a 727 is being used at the moment. All right, what's another way? Vibe. The launch of a spacecraft is very violent. And so we'll take an object and we'll put it on a vibe table, a vibration table, and it'll shake it. It'll shake it in one axis, second axis, and the third axis to see what happens. If it can survive those tests, then it could probably survive launch. Thermal vac chamber. is another way. Thermal vacuum chamber, it's thermal is because of the heat, but it can also go very, very cold. So it's like a refrigerator, very, very cold refrigerator, and a very hot oven combined together. That's a thermal vac chamber. The vac comes from vacuum, so they suck all the air out of it, or as much air as possible from the pumps. So again, we test all the subsystems of the spacesuit to make sure that they work, and so that whenever we assemble them together, it's easier to troubleshoot. It helps pinpoint what's wrong. If we know that things work apart, when we put them together, they should work together. If not, it may be a wire or a connector or some other way that those boxes, electronic boxes, are interacting. And that's the short version of how we test the suit. To train the astronaut, the answer is much the same, but we can add a couple more systems like Argos and Pogo. Those are systems that have strings or connections to the suit that lift them up to simulate weightlessness. And we can connect those strings to the spacesuit as well as to equipment so that an astronaut can practice a mission. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned a little something about testing the spacesuit. Have a great day and happy innovating.